Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, As-salatu was-salamu ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The topic of today's discussion is Al-Ibtidaa, and Al-Ibtidaa literally means the beginning. In the sciences of Tajweed, Al-Ibtidaa refers to the start of the recitation in one of the following ways. Either we are starting our recitation after Al-Qata, that means there was no recitation before it, or we are starting the recitation after Al-Waqf. That means you were reciting before it and you stopped with the intention to resume the following part. This beginning can be at the start of an ayah, or the beginning of a surah, or in the middle of an ayah. And just like the rules of waqf, the reciter must pay complete attention to ibtada as well. And we must be very careful that the reciter begins his or her recitation from a place that gives the proper or intended meaning and not from a place that is giving a wrong meaning. Ibtada can be of two types only. Ibtada ikhtibari, the exam start, the start that is required of the student when being examined by the teacher. That means if a teacher asks you to start from a certain place in an ayah for an exam, then the reciter follows the instruction. But otherwise, ibtada is only ikhtiyari, that is with the choice of the reciter, and that's the reason it is required from the reciter to begin his or her recitation from a place which conveys the proper meaning. Here you can see in a table that ibtada is divided into two categories, ibtada ikhtiyari and ibtada ikhtibari. Since ibtada ikhtiyari is the only one in our hand, so we will study ibtada ikhtiyari in details, and we can see here that it is again subdivided into two groups. The one is ibtada al-jaiz, the allowed beginning, or ibtada al-ghair jaiz, not allowed beginning. The ibtida, which is jaiz, is further divided into three categories, just like waqf, ibtida al-tam, ibtida al-kafi, ibtida al-hasan, and not allowed beginning is actually ibtida al-qabih, the repulsive start. And inshallah, now we will discuss them in detail. As mentioned earlier, ibtida ikhtiyari is divided into two subgroups, ibtida al-jaiz and ibtida al-ghair jaiz. So ibtida al-jaiz, or the allowed beginning, it is the beginning with an independent phrase that has a clear meaning, the meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires and does not contradict with it. Ibtida al-ghair jaiz, the beginning that is not allowed, is the beginning that cancels out the intended meaning or corrupts it or changes it. And this is what we need to avoid completely. So scholars have divided ibtida al-jaiz into further three categories, just like al-waqf, ibtida al-tam, ibtida al-kafi, and ibtida al-hasan. And scholars consider ibtida al-ghair jaiz as ibtida al-qabih. Ibtida al-tam, which comes under the category of ibtida ikhtiyari, whether you are starting your recitation after al-qata or al-waqf, ibtida al-tam is the best place to start your recitation because it is the start on a Quranic word that is not attached to what is before it in grammar or meaning. That means it is the beginning of a new topic and usually occurs at the beginning of a new surah or at the beginning of a new story in the glorious Quran or within a surah when a new topic begins. So basically, ibtida at-tam is after waqf at-tam. Ibtida at-tam can never be in the middle of an ayah. Let's see an example here from Surah Al-Fatiha. As we have discussed in waqf at-tam, if we choose to stop at Maliki Yawmiddin, that is considered as waqf at-tam. So starting from the next ayah, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, is considered as ibtida at-tam because it is not attached with the previous part in grammar or meaning. That's why starting from here will be considered as Ibtidaa at-Tam. And another example of Ibtidaa at-Tam is from Surah Al-Baqarah, when we are starting from ayah number 6, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the disbelievers, because until ayah number 5, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning about the believers. So once we choose to stop at the end of ayah number 5, that is considered as waqfut tam. So the beginning of ayah number 6 will be considered as ibtada at-tam. But one thing we need to remember, since scholars differ in which ayah of the surah there is waqfut tam, so due to that reason, they may also differ in ibtida at-tam. But the rule for ibtida at-tam is, it is the best place to start the recitation, whether we are starting our recitation after al-qata or after al-waqf. The next category of ibtida al-jaiz is ibtida al-kafi, the sufficient start. It is the start on a word which is not connected to the previous part in grammar, but it is still connected to the previous part in meaning. Basically, this is the same topic that is continuing from the previous part. It can be at the start of an ayah or in the middle of an ayah, and it is called kafi or sufficient because starting from here gives a complete meaning on its own. And in other words, ibtada al-kafi is after waqf al-kafi. And the rule of ibtada al-kafi is, it is sufficient to start from here because the sentence is complete in its meaning. And we can take an example from Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 7, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Which means, as for those who persist in disbelief, it is the same whether you warn them or not. They will never believe. So this is ayah number 6. And in the continuation of the topic, we can see ayah number 7, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. Which means, Allah has sealed their hearts and their hearing, and their sight is covered. They will suffer a tremendous punishment. So if you look at ayah number 6 and 7, they are giving a full meaning on their own, but both of these ayah have the same topic. So stopping at ayah number 6 will be considered as waqful kafi. That's why beginning from ayah number 7 will be considered as ibtada al-kafi. And the rule for ibtada al-kafi is, it is allowed to start from a place where the sentence is complete in its meaning. The last category of ibtada al-jaiz is ibtada al-hasan, the good start. It is the start on a Quranic word that gives a good sense of meaning, but it is still connected to what is before it in meaning and grammar both. And ibtada al-hasan can be found at the beginning of an ayah or in the middle of an ayah. And we call it ibtada al-hasan because starting from here leads to a good understanding of the meaning, even though it is connected with the previous part in grammar and meaning both. And the rule of ibtada al-hasan is, it is allowed to start your recitation from a word which is the beginning of a new ayah, even if this ibtada is ibtada al-hasan, because stopping at the end of an ayah is sunnah. But if the word from where you want to start your recitation is in the middle of an ayah, then it is better to go back a few words and start from a suitable place that gives a complete meaning. And again, we can take an example from Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those who believe in the unseen, establish prayer, and donate from what we have provided for them. So if the reciter stops at الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, those who believe in the unseen, It gives a good meaning, but without going back from the beginning of an ayah, if the reciter choose to start from وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ, then this does not give the full meaning. So it's better to go back from the beginning of an ayah and join with the rest of the ayah to give a complete meaning. So the rule of Ibtidaa al-Hasan is, it is okay to start from here as long as you start from a place that gives a complete meaning. Ibtidaa al-Qabih comes under Ibtidaa al-Ghayr Jaiz, the Ibtidaa that is not allowed, because starting from here would either cancels out the intended meaning or corrupts it or changes it. So the rule for Ibtidaa al-Qabih is, it is not allowed, and the reciter must be very careful to start his or her recitation from a place that gives a complete meaning. And if we see an example here from Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا, which means they say Allah has offspring. If the reciter stops at وَقَالُوا, and then instead of going back and starting from the same place, the reciter starts from the following word, then this start will be considered as Ibtidaa al-Qabih, because this beginning is leading to a meaning other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here. And the reciter must be very careful to give the start from a suitable place. And just like this, if we see in another example from Surah Al-Ali Imran, لَقَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ فَقِيرٌ وَنَحْنُ أَغْنِيَاءٌ, which means Allah has heard the statement of those Jews who said, Allah is poor and we are rich. And if a reciter stops at qalu, and instead of going back and starting the recitation from the beginning of an ayah, if the reciter starts from inna Allah, then this will be considered as waqful qabih, because this will change the meaning completely. And this will not be considered as a good beginning. So the rule of Ibtidaa al-Qabih is, it is not allowed, and the reciter must start his or her recitation from a suitable place that gives a complete meaning. That's the end of the topic of Ibtidaa. I hope the topic of Ibtidaa is clear to you. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.